Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question? Bren, would you like to start?
The first thing I'd like to do, Dido, is to say thank you to you, really. Sometimes I go to board meetings and you hear the rhetoric, it's a meeting in public, not a board meeting, and the people sit at the back, and then at the end it's, and thank you very much. I stood outside and read your values, and whatever, about collaboration and trust. And for me, really, in terms of the cultural organisation, it is set at the top, really. And those aren't just values we say, is that we mean, really. So can I say thank you for this opportunity just to say something, really. It's a very powerful statement, if I might add, really. I was privileged to be invited by James Tipcombe when he launched his book, Joshua's Story, really. And I've read some of the papers and whatever, and some of those things and whatever, really. And it is about culture, and I invited James down to have some different conversations, because my personal feeling is we're having conversations, I'm not always sure they're the right conversations and where we need to be. Sometimes they are the easy conversations, easy to access people and whatever. Very much like inequalities, it's easy to reach the quite vocal people and whatever, but we actually really need to reach where we need to be and where we can't be, but we absolutely need to be. And one of the things after reading James Tipcombe's book, really, and the huge privilege and honour to have James down with it, I invited the local trust to comment on that book, really, in a general way, just saying, here it is, can we have your thoughts and whatever. And to use Duncan Selby's words and whatever, I'm not always sure, I wasn't convinced that they all got it. Some went straight down the lines of maternity. But what James was clearly saying in his book, that this could be any department, talked about human resources, whatever, really. So I think there is something still, really, if I'm truthful and honest, really, about the consistent leadership we've got out there, really, both locally and nationally. I think there's something to reflect on, really. I see some great leaders one moment and whatever, and I think, not really sure when it just gets a bit choppy, or sometimes it's I'm getting a question that I don't like, or something I don't want to hear and whatever, really. So I think there is something about that and whatever, really. The bit about what can the offer be in terms of the different departments with NHS improvement to really take up this opportunity of really engaging with the patient participation view. And I think we've got to make it real for that department. We've got to make it real in terms of what will they buy into, and I think those stories bit from the patient side of things that are both challenging but also celebratory, really, in the sense that, for instance, what does that mean in terms of the social return on investment? So I think it needs to be appropriate to those different departments. It can't be a one size fits all, whatever. We know that from many of the things that we do, really. So that would just be a thought and whatever, really, on that one, really. And also we've got to provide the support for people to be confident in doing these things as well. It may well be very much outside of their comfort zone, and that confidence. I don't think necessarily the toolkits always do that, really. They're great guides to go back to and whatever, really. But I think it's that really human support around the person to support them in that journey or whatever. And sometimes people will get it straight away. Sometimes people might not get it at all, really. And that bit about leadership, Ian, you mentioned, really, about how we support people on that journey. I've got quite a bit more, not a bit more, but a couple more, and I don't want to take any more out, if that's...
Very quickly.
Right, very quickly. I've got a couple, I'll send them through anyway. The most important thing, if I may, Dido, I'd like to thank Sarah Harkness as your non-exec director, really, for coming down. And I've said it before, really, but there is an end to this one, really, for coming down and having those different conversations with people in the community. I'd also like to thank Ruth, really, who joined us at the House of Lords when we did the celebration and recognition event of that national to local pilot, again with national leaders having conversations that I'm not sure they have too many of and whatever, really. Very, very small micro groups and whatever, talking about what mattered to the groups, not what mattered for the organisations, but actually what mattered to the groups and whatever. And we, through Ruth and other arm's length bodies, NHS England, and even managed to meet Lord Carlisle, who walked in and said, "Are you Brennan? I thought I'd just join you," really. But that opportunity, and again, what was so important, that the community groups weren't a bolt on. They weren't saying, okay, we've had the conversation with you on the 7th and have done that pilot, we'll let you know how it goes. They were given the microphone to share what mattered to them on an individual basis with national leads, local executive leads and whatever really. And the one thing that we didn't manage to do is get Duncan Selby on their holiday to Pontins on a small header. We've still got that for next year and whatever. I guess the point I'm making really is it does come down to individuals who get it. I know Ruth do. I pretty much critique your paper on the patient above, and the other bit really I think we really need to have in there is the NHS constitution. Many of the things that you've talked about, if you go back to the NHS constitution, and the offer I would say really is maybe look back through your papers and say, actually, at what stage have we explicitly cited that in relevance to some of this work? So I suppose that's a challenge coming back.
Very good challenge. Thank you. Do you want to comment?
I think it stands. I mean, it's an extraordinary prescient comment, isn't it?
Yeah.
100% support.
I think, Bren, I think I speak for the board and we completely agree with you that leadership is the most important part, and where our organisation can and should play a much bigger role in identifying, supporting, developing, coaching and challenging leaders in the system, and we need to build our capability to do that better. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks to you.
Are there any other questions from members of the public?
Listening to the discussion then, really Ruth started it and then there were other comments on it. I've worked in the private sector for more than a decade and I'm currently enjoying garden leave, which is why I can be here and listen to this discussion. But staff engagement, staff morale is just a world apart from what I've just heard. And I'm just wondering, when so my previous role I was dealing with health organisations, just to be clear, and I never heard of a single organisation that actually asked their staff in a regular basis, more than the September survey, March results, which isn't massively useful for quick changes. There were some that would say, okay, we use SurveyMonkey from time to time, but it seems ridiculously simple in my head at the moment to just use technology to poll 1.3 million staff, 1.6 million staff, however many it is. It's easy. You could poll on a fortnightly basis or on a monthly basis or quarterly basis and anonymise it and use that feedback to highlight. I think, I don't know how Lord Carter said, are there any other mid-staffs, or Liverpool's just around the corner? You could find that out in the space of a couple of months and poll 1 million people very easily. So am I missing something? Are there initiatives like that I'm unaware of, or is it something that could be looked at?
The staff survey's just come out, as many people have noticed, and what's interesting from my... thank you, Richard, I can't get eye contact with the gentleman, sorry. And what's interesting for me is if you think about some of the amazing organisations, so one like West Suffolk, Stephen Dunn has done an amazing job there, in my view, around staff engagement with Jan Bloomfield, the Director of HR. They're using technology, they're using the power of Twitter, the power of social media very, very readily. In fact, you can't keep him off it, Stevie Dunn. But one of the things that he knows, every member of that organisation, they all know him. They just had Chris Poynton out there doing Hello, My Name Is. They've really got it with staff engagement. And surprise, surprise, what we've seen is whilst they've had some massive challenges on A&E and some other challenges, they've just recently gone from good rating in CQC to outstanding. A real positive correlation between fabulous leadership and also longevity of leadership as well, across a whole, so they've got depth and breadth at a board, but also one that is using technology, using social media, and bingo, you get some really great care. But I think we've got some lessons to learn nationally about how we can do that as more of a scale up. So we've got other organisations, one in London in particular, that's doing some great work on this. But we've got more to learn, and I think we've got much more to learn around technology. Yeah. You're right, no doubt. That's what you'd be telling me too.
Absolutely.
So we'll take your points. Have another chat again in a minute.
I mean, if there is a sort of magic gold dust for transforming healthcare organisations, it's in the leadership and culture, isn't it? And that's what we see time and time again. So in that sense, it is that obvious, but of course the art of doing it is incredibly hard and challenging, and that's the piece we've got to face into, how we're identifying the talent, supporting people who find it hard, and listening, really listening to the feedback, because I think you're right, the feedback is there if we look for it where things are not working.
It's a theme we've heard a lot of this afternoon.
We really have. It runs through pretty much everything we've just covered.
I think the only thing I would add to that, Dido, and like I obviously spend a lot of my time in emergency departments, and clearly some of those departments are very, very challenged, and clearly I am a visitor to them, but one thing that I have picked up consistently over the course of the last 12, 14 months is that the departments that have a real engagement of their workforce, that communication works well, that you see a very different sense of morale in the departments. And I don't want to name any particular department, but I was really struck some months ago by going to a department that was on its hands and knees, and the chief nurse there had organised that at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning the staff all sat down and had a cooked breakfast, and they did it in chefs, and something like that made such a difference to, and I'm not suggesting that that's the be all and end all, but it was that sensitivity and that dialogue. So I think communication, engagement, because I think what we need to remember is that most people who choose to work in emergency departments at the front line are motivated to really deliver for their patients and are proud of what they do deliver, and sometimes it's really hard for them when they go home and they read the local newspaper that always has the difficult stories as well. So it's that communication.
Agreed. Excellent. We are running a little bit over, so unless there are any other burning questions to take in the formal meeting.
There was only one really. One of the thank yous I forgot, because I think it's really important. It takes little, but I think it means a lot, is to Sue Dehaney as the regional director for the Southwest for NHS England and NHS Improvement. I use the word got it, and whatever really, as Duncan always says, absolutely, totally
Thanks
gets
very
it
much.
really.
Thank you. That's a really nice way to end the meeting.
Thank you.
We will now end the public meeting and restart in private if we can in 10 minutes, if that's okay.